Hello and welcome to the Flicks Forum podcast, where each episode we go back and look at Netflix original films in the order of release. Today we have Netflix's 75th film. It's the 2017 drama Roxanne Roxanne. It's directed by Michael Larnell and it stars Chante Adams, Mahershala Ali, Nia Long, Elvis Nolasco, Kevin Phillips and Shenell Edmonds. And I'm Jesse and I'm with MJ.
How you going, mates? It's good to be back. Good to have another film that's just... Netflix is just always throwing us different films every single week. There's no set brand or anything that they're going off, and this was something very different again.
Yeah, it's a very good way of putting it early on because, yeah, I don't know what I was expecting with this one.
No, true. I had absolutely no idea.
Hadn't heard of it, had no expectations, and it's just like, all right, let's pop it on and see what we got.
It's so true. We're at the point now where we literally just press and play. I don't even like to read the line on Netflix before you go into it.
Don't want to, yeah. All right, so let's do our own little line here with our Fast Flicks, where we do our little summary of the film. MJ, what's your Fast Flicks for Roxanne?
Roxanne. A teenager hustles her way through family hardships and eventual stardom as life throws everything it can at her along the way.
Very nice.
Very nice,
I like
thank
it because
you.
it's broad.
Yeah.
I do like it.
Yeah, we're getting broader and broader. Is that good or bad?
I just like the broadness. It's good. So I've gone broad too. So I've said, a kid from the streets makes it big in the rap world, but may not be able to maintain longevity.
See, that's good as well. And I've said to you before, I like the Fast Flicks to be someone pulling me up and saying, MJ, you seen Roxanne? What's it about? Mm. And if I'm asking someone what it's about, I kind of want an idea of the feel of the film. I don't want to be like, oh, this happens and this happens and this happens. So I think we're all right with our Fast Flicks. I love that we're on air while we're sense checking.
It's taken a year for me to get it down. But we're there.
We're not there. We're always improving.
Correct. Always learning. Life's about learning. So this is the stage where we have a look and see if we've learnt anything about the film. Mm. What were you able to grasp onto?
Yeah, well, so despite the film releasing on the 23rd of March 2018, this is technically a 2017 film.
It is.
So in January of 2017, Neon acquired the distribution rights for this film. However, in December of that year, so basically a full year, it was revealed that Netflix had then won the worldwide rights to the film. So it was then screened at the US Dramatic Competition section of Sundance. Or not then, that was prior to that. Yeah, in 2017 it was at Sundance. And then off the back of that, Netflix snaffled it up.
Put it out a bit over a year later.
Yeah, so this is so similar in so many ways to Imperial Dreams. Yes. So this is a film that we did earlier on last year now. I think it was the 25th Netflix film from memory.
Yeah.
I actually remember that because this is the 75th. How funny is that?
Oh, wow.
So that was like a 2015 film that ended up releasing in 2017. It bounced around.
True. Yeah.
And this is kind of similar, and then they sort of got the rights and held off and tried to figure out the right release strategy for it. And similarly to Imperial Dreams, it had a lot of really, really similar themes.
True.
So it's interesting. It's always quite hard to pigeonhole, I guess, from an executive perspective. What's the best route for these kinds of films? How do we want to release them? Should they be at the cinema? Should we just chuck them on streaming platforms? Should we release them at a certain time? So, I guess Netflix is still learning how to use that as well.
Love all of that. I think that's great, and I think you got to start off with this too. It's based on a true story.
Yeah, it is.
So it's what fits into that Netflix category where they do those biographical sort of films. And there's a few that we've watched now as well. So I guess they're an easy watch because you've got this built-in audience already that are like, hey, I remember that event. I remember that artist.
Yeah.
I liked them. Let's see what their life's like.
Speaking of which, so Roxanne Chante, which is her stage name, did you know her prior to the film?
No, I didn't.
No? Cool. No, neither did I. So the film obviously revolves around her life and from basically from the age of 14 to early 20s, maybe it sort of ends. Yep. Maybe not even quite that old in the end. Kind of difficult to figure out the time that passes in this film, to be honest.
The actress who plays Roxanne Chante, her mother named her after her.
Awesome.
How crazy is that?
That's awesome. Could you imagine when this role came up and Chante Adams was just like, I have to get this role. Like this was made for me. I was born into this role.
I was named after her.
And I believe Chante Adams is she had a theatrical background. This is her first film, I think.
Okay.
So she had a theatrical background, and someone saw her that liked and saw what they liked, and then got the invite to audition for this film, and obviously the rest is history. I think the thing with this is you do need to have some sort of singing or rapping chops before you can really pull this role off.
Unless you want them to lip sync.
Difficult thing to lip sync though.
True,
rapping.
Yeah, very true, very true. So the interesting, I thought this was it was co-produced by Forrest Whitaker and Pharrell Williams.
Saw that.
There's some big names.
And you know the other executive producer was the actual Roxanne Chante.
Yeah, she was involved quite a bit.
Yeah,
from what I can see.
So she was on set most days. There were some days where she just couldn't come purely because reliving some of that stuff was just too much for her. Which, when you see a film like this that's biographical about someone who's obviously still around and still, you know, somewhat in the prime of her life, you just wonder how heavy this must be for them, because they're really reliving this stuff and they're showing the whole world what they went through.
And some of these moments are pretty tough.
Oh yeah, bloody
very
oath.
tough. And they said, you know, during the 6-week shoot when she was there, she taught Adams like the best way to shoplift and the best way to rap with braces on, and just these nice little moments that I guess really add to that character.
Absolutely. I love the shoplifting idea. Like, apparently they filmed that scene and then the real Roxanne was just like, no, that's not how you do it. That's not what I was doing.
The director, I got a quote from the director here.
Oh, yeah?
He said, I wanted to focus on the music at first, so when he first picked up the story, and the world of Queensbridge where it's set, but after, he was told what she actually went through, he's like, I want to focus on the feelings, and the focus to be on her rather than the music.
Yeah, well, I think that certainly came out. The music felt very secondary to me.
Massively, yeah.
And I suppose not being familiar with any of the songs, I wasn't sure if we ever got to a point where like, oh, this is the big hit or anything like that. I just wasn't familiar.
Yeah, I didn't know any of the music at all. One
of the cool things is that it did pretty well with some awards. So it won at Sundance for breakthrough performance for Chante Adams, which is a great one to have. I was very surprised when I saw it, because this is a film I'd never heard of that didn't seem to be that big, and it's winning an award at Sundance, and it was nominated for a bunch more as well.
4 other nominations.
Yeah, and another one at Sundance, nominated for the Grand Jury Prize for the director Michael Larnell. Also nominated in the Black Reel Awards for a couple of different categories, and also the Guild of Music Supervisors Award for Best Music, which again, if you're really into this and the music side of the story, probably would have been
good.
Would have been nice.
I had a Netflix percentage match for this one.
I was thinking this as soon as you hit record, because I know we're talking about it now. I either didn't have one, or I didn't look at it. And if that's the case, I'm really sorry, but I don't remember.
No, it's every now and then you don't.
Yeah, I know you don't.
You don't go in.
Maybe I didn't.
I had a 77% match for this one.
Okay.
Which is, a weird sort of number.
You do tend to have some lower matches.
Yeah.
So that's pretty par, I guess, for you, would you say?
Yeah, I don't know.
More than I would.
When I saw 77, I was like, oh, okay. I'm not sure where that's supposed to tell. Like, am I supposed to sort of like it? Or...
It's a funny one,
weird, because like if you think 80 and above, you're like, oh, okay, it's a pretty good match.
Film, yeah.
And then like if it's under 50, you're like, okay, I'm not gonna like it. But when you're in that range,
true.
77, like it's a little bit more than a 75, which is a B plus. Like, what is it? I don't know.
It's kind of a tough one as well. I don't know how that algorithm works. I think I told you this when we did the movie The Open House, which was a truly terrible film. But I love horror films, and it gave me a really good match, and because it was a horror film. But as I said to you on that podcast, I like good horror films. Like, there should be a thing like, this is a bad horror film, so if you like bad horror films, you might like it. But it's handy though. It is always handy.
Yeah, it gives you that little bit of extra interest to work out if they actually know enough about you.
Yeah.
This time to look at some consensus.
Yeah.
What about the public and the critics? What have you got?
Not too bad. Like, it's sitting at a 6.2 out of 10 on IMDb, and that's off 2,300 ratings. So not a huge sample size, but 2,500 is pretty good. Yeah. And it's a 3 out of 5 on Letterboxd from 1,200 ratings. So I think they're pretty good scores.
Yeah. I got a Google match for this one again.
Oh yeah.
94%.
Now, we've never looked into what constitutes a Google rating.
Do it.
We've said it in about our last 9 episodes. We'll look into it. Yeah,
it's
we'll
like
look
saying
into
it. It's so positive. It just makes me happy to know that there's some positivity in the world.
The irony being that when we did The Irishman, that was like high 80s.
Yeah, it was one of the lower ones that we had.
The one that was really high everywhere else.
The Rotten Tomatoes, our favourite, 70% on 30 reviews, which is fresh.
I'm very surprised that this had 30 critical reviews.
Well, I guess it played Sundance, and if it played Sundance, it'd pick up a few.
Sorry, that's an excellent call.
The audience was at 63% on just over 200. So, yeah, it's not too far off.
Yeah, they're all actually pretty similar. It seems like this is kind of like a 3 out of 5, 6 out of 10 kind of movie.
Yeah. Okay. I think it's time for our early thoughts. Before we get into the characters and the scenes, what are your early thoughts on this one, MJ?
This film didn't work for me.
Okay.
I kind of alluded to it before. The pacing felt really off. Just the way they went through time, and because they did cover a few years, it was just disjointed and jerky, and it really stopped me from being able to get into it and follow the narrative structure in the way it should be told.
Sure.
And then that was compounded probably by the fact that I had a lot of trouble engaging with any of the characters. Nothing pulled me in that respect either. So when I'm sort of struggling with a narrative structure and struggling to latch onto any character, I was kind of treading water for a little bit. And then all in all, like, the movie was just a bit too bleak. I felt like I was missing pieces all the way throughout that might have helped me explain certain situations, and that just might be my experience with this world that is just so foreign to me. I just couldn't pick up on anything. Nothing was being spoon fed to me. Not that I need to be spoon fed sometimes, but the whole thing never really came together for me.
Sure.
You?
So I mentioned what the director had said about, the focus of this isn't on the music, and that was one of the first things I wrote down when I was watching this film. Was this is a music film, but the music plays that background, sort of that role, and the focus was definitely on the characters and the people. I wanted more music.
Right.
I wanted to hear her perform more.
Yeah.
And I did read that, that were some of the more costly scenes when you've got to get a crowd in with extras and all that sort of stuff and make sure that the sound's matching up. But yeah, I still appreciated the story, but to me, like, films like 8 Mile and stuff, they work because you got these songs that you bop along to and enjoy, and there wasn't enough of that. And that's
just the thing that got me, and I didn't even know that she was a rapper or a singer or anything, but that first scene when she's a kid doing that rap contest, you're probably sitting there going, right, we're gonna get a lot of rap in this, and I think the directors, Michael Larnell's completely justified in making that decision to focus on the life, because that's the story. I can totally understand that. But to your point, why not just completely flood it with music as well? I think, you probably missed opportunity there. You're right.
Yeah. Okay, so this is where we talk about some characters from the film.
Yep.
So I get you've got to start with Chante.
We've got to start with Chante. I say it so Aussie and ochre, and I kept saying Chante, I think. So my apologies to our listeners out there going, this guy. You said it really well.
Chante. What do you think of Chante?
Well, I mean, this kind of is what I was talking about before. Is I had so much trouble getting into this character. I found her to be arrogant and ungrateful, and she handled a lot of situations poorly. Now that's fine. That's what a character is allowed to do. I don't have to like what they do to appreciate what they're doing. But she became too dislikable when she started being successful, and I kind of feel like they made it too obvious that she was gonna end up going back to her roots and reconnecting and realizing that this is what's most important in life.
Yeah.
I don't like that kind of really obvious. Like, the character arc's great, but you're throwing it in my face and saying, this next half an hour, this is what's going to happen. And
I think we're going to be very similar on our thoughts on maybe more than one character in this, because
maybe
I've got a lot of similar feelings with what you've said, and it was. They set her up as this character that can't deal with rules, can't deal with anyone telling her what to do. And they started off really early when she goes to school and she's at a new school and the teacher's like, I've got these rules in my class, you got to follow these rules. And then the next scene is mum's like, the door locks at 9 o'clock, you've got to be home by 9. And then from that setup, I'm similar to you. I would think this is the same thing, but that transformation from her being this kid to being such a bitch so quickly, just like it was like the click of the fingers, of like this snap that she was like, okay, so as soon as I've got a good song, I'm a horrible person.
Yeah.
And yeah, I struggled to sort of connect with that. And
It's kind of cliche in that sense as well. It's the like, oh, you got famous, you forgot about everyone, you became a bad person.
and just some of the things that she did, like, you know, there's a kid that comes up for the autograph.
Yeah.
And
Where did that come from, right?
Yeah,
Like,
and it wasn't even an autograph. It was like he was asking her out on a date in a sort of cute sort of way.
I think he also wanted to be a rapper, and instead of said, you know, listen to what I've got. And
and in the street, and she's like, you know, you come back to me because he sort of froze because he was so nervous.
Yeah,
And it's
right.
like, yeah, you know, come back, and then she's doing this interview once the song goes big, and she's got the guy, and he's like trying to put a bit of character beneath her. You know, say this is a normal person who does the laundry, and I found her when she was doing the laundry, and she has a go at him about.
You always bring that up, like, well,
that's actually
it's
a good
cool
story.
It's a cool,
So I wasn't a big fan of those character traits.
I know what you mean, but I look. The main part of the story with her as well is that she really was up against it, and I probably didn't realize this until later on, that she really was always trying to find that father figure to lean on. She wanted to go out on her own, but she was always craving that support. And there's that scene initially where she's staying at whether it's her cousin's house or it's one of her friend's house, and he sort of tries to make moves on her against her will. And then he sort of says, sorry, but you got to go. And she's like, no, you can do whatever you want to me. You can do whatever you want to me. That she just had that ability to, if you're going to look after me, I'll give you anything you want. And it was exactly the same with Cross when he ended up walking out on them at that lunch, and then she followed him and basically was just like, whatever, like, I need you in my life. I just need to lean on you. It was you know, it was really sad in that sense because she didn't have any paternal support really.
Yep. Yeah.
But it also got me as well that because she really wanted to go out on her own. She really wanted to get away from that family lifestyle that she had. She had all these people and all these connections. Every time she walked down the street, people knew her, people liked her. The guy that recorded her when she was doing her laundry. But she kept saying how alone she was all the time, and it just didn't fit together for me that everyone knew her, everyone, you know, had time for her, but she was, I don't know. And I don't know if that was something that I missed or it was just a bit sloppy.
Yeah, I think that it's got the film's got good intentions in trying to show you this character and the struggles that she has, but yeah, maybe it wasn't done in the right way. Like the build up wasn't enough. It was too jarring.
It was. It really was, and I think that was to do with that pacing, just in general. You know, so remember she was blowing out her birthday candles, and they were 14.
14, yeah.
I don't recall her ever like growing up between that and then the next time she said something about the mum was like, you're 16 years old, and I was like, when did she turn 16? Like, last I know she was 14.
Yeah, she wasn't. When was she 15?
Yeah, I feel like a week's passed in like film time. I don't know. I was just so, and then the whole time I'm like, man, this girl's 14, and then it's like, oh, you're 16. I'm like, oh, I was really confused.
Yep, I've got Cross next.
So do I.
Just because he was so controlling from the start, and the thing that highlighted the most was when he takes her back and he like puts his fur coat on her, and then puts the fur coat on. And he's literally like, you know, it's not yours, that's mine. And then he's got her one, but he just wanted to make sure that she knew that coat's his. And you know, he's always standing up to guys who's so possessive, and that I really hated that part of him where he's always like, you know, I only hit you because I love you.
And that's sadly,
it's hard to watch, and I totally get this is important to be on the screen because it can connect with so many people, and it's really good that she does sort of stand up against him at the end.
Yeah.
And we haven't done a spoiler alert. Spoiler alert.
Good, we haven't ruined anything yet.
No, not really.
Yeah, so if you haven't seen the film, we are going to spoil it from now on.
And the same when she's in hospital and he checks her in as his daughter.
Yeah.
Like, it's just this controlling sort of stuff.
Did you think he checked her in as his daughter, or do you think the nurse assumed?
It's a good question.
Because I saw that as the nurse assuming, and like a wake up call, like, yeah, this is creepy, Roxanne, like, or Chante, sorry.
Yeah, I had just me based on everything he'd done. I was like, he's done this on purpose. It's more control. It's like, if she's a kid, I can check her in, I can check her out. I take control of her.
Great point.
And even at the end, you know, it's just, you know, he says, you know, you're never not going to be my woman. It was just
after he'd taken money off her for their child. Like,
And
you know what? Everything that you said is bang on, and the sad thing is he's an example of something that is probably really common.
Yep.
And that's what's really hard to swallow. It also highlighted in Chante's sense that talent can only get you so far. Like you need so much support.
People around you that have got your intentions at heart.
Yeah, and your own
themselves.
independence as well, though, because that's what she didn't have either. She was like a chameleon. With whoever she was around, she was part of them, and in that sense, it was Cross for most of that part of it. So I also don't understand where the hell Cross came from. So he was there at the start with that shop with his kid, and I got the vibe that they didn't know each other. He was just like, "Hey, can you look after my kid?" And she swindled him for cash. The next time you see him, he's like pulling up in the car being like, "Hey, Chante."
Here's my cell phone.
I'm like, do you know each other now? Did I miss something? Do you think they knew each other in that first scene?
I didn't have any inkling that I thought maybe they did know each other.
Okay. I was just like, this is some random dude. And then I was like, oh, it's Mahershala Ali.
I thought it was like all these people in this area know each other somehow or another.
Okay.
And they all bounced off each other. That, guys riding by on their bikes and in the shop, the guy in the shop.
Sure.
Like, it was just this little community.
Because it just came from this guy who seemed like he came out of nowhere to... She's like, oh, yeah, this is the guy I'm going to use as my protector sort of thing. Like, I was like, oh. Yeah, the whole thing was weird.
Who have you got next?
I've actually got Renita next, only because I just want to touch on her briefly.
Sure.
So Renita was her best friend.
Best friend, yeah.
And I just thought she was a great beacon of support. She was there for Chante no matter what, to the point where Chante didn't recognise how important she was. Pretty simple.
Stereotypical friend that you let down. And
exactly right. And it was even that blatant scene where she was going off on a tour, which to me it just felt out of the blue. But Renita, who had been there all along, was just like, "Oh, hey girl, like where'd you come from?" It's like, "Hang on, didn't you hang out with her yesterday?" And then there was that line that was something like, "I'm gonna come back," as if, and she's like, "Oh no, you're not," or like as if like you're gone mentally as opposed to actually physically being here. So, and I just liked the fact that she stood by her through everything, even when at the very start when that bloke stole their money, and then even at the end. She was there again, so
just good friend.
Good friend.
I wanted to talk about Peggy.
Yep.
Mum, because they set her up really nicely as this caring person and they make this big deal about her. She's always thinking about everyone else. Been saving. She's like, "I'll do anything for my kids, anything for my babies." I really disliked her full turn to alcoholism in about 2 seconons.
You've taken the words out of my mouth.
It was like this quick turn that you had a bad experience. A guy's taken everything you've got, and then it's like she has one drink and now she's a full-on alcoholic.
I couldn't agree more. They showed her as someone who had this drive and this work ethic to save 20 grand in that time. That's a ton of money. And then she just gave up. Yeah. Like it didn't work for me either. I was like, this is this lovely lady, and
you need to see that decline.
Exactly,
you need to see
right.
a couple more things go wrong for her to fall as deep and dark as they showed her.
Absolutely. And again, that's just that pacing. They just didn't tell that story in a nice fashion for it to flow. And yeah, that character just never worked. And you know what? Secondly on that is her ability to turn back that when Chante's in the hospital, and which actually was quite a nice scene, and she sort of says like, I never had a mother. You had a drink that day and that was it. And then she just sort of flicked a switch again and was okay. It's like, you knew that this was an issue, right? You knew you were doing this. You didn't take one line from your daughter to say, and everything's clear.
They tried to lead into that. There was like a scene before that where she was tipping the booze down the sink.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I thought it was good or anything, but they attempted to try and make it more than... But yeah, I agree.
Yeah, no, right.
Blatantly in your face, it's like,
I'm going to switch right back. Which was nice. And you know what? If you've got this emotional investment in the film, that scene would have been really important.
Yeah.
And look, I love a happy ending. Like, as happy as it can get. At least this wasn't as bleak as the rest of the film was. Yeah. So it was nice to have it there. But this character never worked for me.
Have you got any other characters?
I don't
either. Good.
No.
So, the director, Michael Larnell.
Yep.
Second feature. The first one was called Cronies.
2015 comedy.
Yeah, and 6.4 on IMDb. Pretty decent.
89 ratings. So that's his family and...
Nah,
but no. Apparently, it's meant to be quite good. Apparently, there's a bit of critical acclaim. I read a thing somewhere saying Michael Larnell, who directed the popular Cronies or the critically successful Cronies, but I wasn't familiar with any of his work. He'd done a few shorts prior to that feature, but
interesting.
But obviously got a nod at Sundance. So good.
What did you think of the cast?
He wrote it as well, to his credit.
Okay, good. What did you think of the cast?
I thought some of the acting was pretty poor. I thought some of it was pretty wooden. Some of the chemistry wasn't really there. It wasn't terrible. But I must admit I was surprised when Chante Adams won that award at Sundance. But I guess the way that she
put herself into it
completely owned that role, I get. But
I wasn't 100% sold on Mahershala Ali.
No?
No. I think he played the role well.
Yep.
But there was something that was just off about it for me, and I don't know whether it was because maybe he's out of that whole cast, he's the only one that I sort of knew, and maybe it stood out that I was like, you aren't on this playing field with the rest of the people that are here.
True.
And maybe they needed someone that wasn't as well known. I'm not sure.
Maybe
it was just.
It didn't impact for me.
No, and I don't like seeing him as a. Creep
you know
well.
what? That could be
That
more
could
of
be
it.
yeah.
Like he's a respected guy. He's had so many really, really important roles where he's the exact opposite of that. So I don't know. And
his
performance was pretty good.
Yeah, and obviously he sold it for me to feel.
Yeah, no, I hate you. Why are you such a bad dude? Yeah. I see what you're saying.
Yeah, but I'm not sure. That was the only thing I had there.
Yeah. Yeah, some of it didn't work for me, to be honest. A lot of it didn't work for me. But
all right, well, let's go on to some scenes. What scenes stood out for you in this film?
There's a couple. There was a scene early on when they were waiting for their father to pick them up, and they all stood around the little girl when she had to go to the toilet. I liked seeing Chante being warm and comforting. And just the little girl's reaction was really cute after she'd finished peeing.
I don't think there was any stage throughout the film where she didn't want to do stuff for her sisters, and I kind of like that.
Except the fact that she walked out on them. See, that didn't sit well with me either.
Yeah, I agree with you, and at the same time, she was a little bit older than them and wanted that to try and experience life or whatever she wanted herself, and she was sick of like I think I said earlier, those rules, and she couldn't deal with those rules, and I feel like that she would have happily taken. I don't know. Yeah,
it's interesting because she didn't have that ethic to fight. So when things got hard, she didn't want to fight. She wanted to run away, and she wanted to rely on other people to make it okay. So when things got tough at home, she really could have lent into that mother figure to those girls, which she did so naturally. And they looked up to her, and every time the sisters were together, I enjoyed it. I was quite happy.
Yeah.
And I wish she had it. We're talking about a true story here, so it's not like we wish they had done that. But I think she just lacked this fight, and it's probably quite evident the whole way through the film until the end that she sort of does, grow those balls and fights back.
Yep. What else have you got?
I sort of said I didn't mind that scene at the hospital and the message that was in it, even though I was aware that it wasn't as black and white as they made it out to be in that, because Chante had made a lot of her own mistakes as well, and her mum obviously knew before then that this wasn't like the turning point in her life, but it felt poignant even though it didn't quite have the desired effect for me. But there was something there that they almost got it right. Yeah. And the other thing I liked was that when that dude started beatboxing, she lost their DJ, he's like, I'll beatbox for you. And he was really good.
He was, yeah.
It was really good beatboxing. So I had to note that as well.
Good. Okay. I've only got a couple. Although I didn't like the switch from Peggy, the mum, turning from such a lovely person into an alcoholic, I thought the scene with her sitting at the kitchen table with the friend when she realizes that the bloke's run off with the money. I thought the acting performance in that scene was quite good. She did that really well. Just that disappointment and
you felt it,
and anger.
Yeah, it was bleak.
Yeah, I thought that was a good scene. I liked all the rap performances. I wanted more. I wanted more of those. They were good. There's a scene. It was one of the best parts of sort of the edit was there's a scene where you see her screaming. It's like she's having that her first sexual sort of experience, and then this quick cut that cuts to her screaming giving birth and then screaming being dragged by Cross. And I just thought that was a good little way to quickly pass the time, saying bang, 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 this is what's happened, and she's still been in pain that whole time.
Very good point. And one of the few times that you could really clearly follow the progression. Time. Yeah.
The last thing I had was at the end of the film, I liked that they showed some footage of the real life Chante.
Yeah.
And the words or the interview that they decided to include directly connected with what they were saying in this film, and I really appreciated that. They were, it was this interview where she was talking about the importance of family and men living up to their responsibilities. Men, yeah. And I thought that the film did an okay job with those ideas.
You're talking about a woman who's A, telling a story about herself, and B, an executive producer on the film. Yeah, this is really clearly the message that she wanted people to get when watching that film.
Yeah. Okay, what wasn't that great?
The first 15 minutes didn't work for me at all.
Sure.
Showing that family getting swindled without really understanding who they were. They didn't set the family up well enough. They didn't set up that relationship with David at all, and that dynamic. Yeah. I kind of saw it coming, and it would have been nice if I didn't see it coming. Maybe really set up this nice, loving relationship with David. I don't know.
Because he seemed like he was an okay guy.
He seemed like
that temptation was like...
money. Well, I think you're supposed to probably think that this was his plan, and what a great opportunity to get him. But I didn't know enough about the dynamic to really have that matter for me at the time. There's a scene at the garage where the guy gave her a car. Yeah. Firstly, I don't know where that came from because I thought she was still 14 at the time. But the acting by the car salesman or whatever he was just atrocious.
There's something about Southern hospitality or something.
Oh, that was honestly terrible. When you talked about that transition into her having sex for the first time, having a kid, and then obviously being abused. So you've created this time loop or time warp where we've gone through maybe 2 years in time. So she's got a kid. You get the feeling she hasn't done any music or anything in that time. And then all of a sudden they just wanted her at Coachella. So straight away this guy comes, they want you to perform at Coachella. I'm like, haven't you just disappeared into the abyss? So again, it didn't work for me. You kind of wish it was maybe she was trying to get back into rapping and he was holding her back, and then this opportunity came.
It's maybe where you include a little bit of the music to keep progressing the story.
Or she was listening to her music and being like, this is what I've missed out on, or
even doing a little rap to her kid, holding her kid.
Yeah.
I don't know, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. It just came out of the blue for me, and I'm like, well, you've just skipped 2 years and then you've jumped to something that doesn't fit. I need more than that. And speaking of needing more, the very last scene, I needed a bit more there as well. It was really nice to see that by the end, everything seems to be working out really well. But I needed to see it happen, not just hear it happen. Not just we're moving house. I got my new record coming out. It was we got to finish this film on a good note. There we go, done.
She's happy to support an up-and-coming kid now and give him advice.
And it was all great. I'm glad that's how it ended. But you just told me what happened instead of showing me and making me feel it. So
fair, all fair points, I think.
Yeah.
You mentioned this before, that scene where Chante's staying at Tone's place and he tries to force himself on her. I just didn't like it. It's he just has some drugs and then he switches completely into a different sort of person. There was a lot of drug use in this.
I don't mind the message though of her wearing skimpy clothes and guys thinking, well, if you're going to show off to me, then what am I expected to do? Because that's a thing that happens a lot, and it's an entitlement that bad people think that they can do. And if girls want to dress the way they want to dress, let them dress that way.
And I thought
I get
the character made a really good point. She was literally these are the pajamas I've worn the whole time I've been here. So now you've done some drugs and you're feeling differently. I didn't like that scene. And there's a scene where Chante goes home and she gets her hair cut.
Oh yeah.
It was just too obvious, this symbol of change, and I just couldn't deal with it.
Well, she said it. She's like, that ponytail is so and so, and this is
it was just too obvious. Too obvious. That's all I had there. All right, what's the film trying to say? What are some themes, some ideas, some messages? It was trying to say quite a bit.
Yeah, and this is where the film shines a little bit, and this is where you need to take your hat off to. It's a really brave take to go out and make a film like this, where from an entertainment level, people aren't going to sit there and go, "Well, this movie makes me feel great."
No,
it's a hard watch, and And you got to take your hat off for them having the balls to do this. So there's an idea of trying to break free from the shackles of poverty, but then not realizing the challenges that come with success. So you do all the hard work to get there, and you're like, hang on, this is just as difficult. And life is tough that way, especially if you're coming with that sort of background and that kind of baggage.
Yeah, it's that old sort of, that rags to riches, but overcoming these odds. Like they have that house and it's taken away from them, and at the same time, you've got this exploitative music industry that's just continually taking from her.
Yeah.
That's what she wants to do. She wants to succeed in that, but
Yep.
it's taking away from her, so she doesn't have that opportunity to fully get that riches.
And look, and half the reason why she doesn't succeed in that sense is because she gets arrogant. She pushes those people away from her, and that's a key message as well, is that don't push people away that are always there for you, because they're bloody hard to find. And once you get famous, the mooches are going to be there as much as possible, and you need to be able to navigate your way through that world.
Yeah, the sisterhood too, but this sort of, like you spoke about this, your favourite sort of scenes, when the sisters were together, and
Yep.
I thought they did a good job of showing that close bond they had, and they also did it through that Sparky rapper that she was on tour with. Like,
Yeah.
she was happy to, they'd ripped her off, taken her money,
That was good of her.
and she was like, I'm happy to give you a bit of my cash too, because we're sisters, we're there for each other.
You get the feeling that the real Roxanne is obviously close to her or credits her for something, and it's like, we got to put something with her in there doing something good. That's how I felt. It was nice.
Yeah. You spoke about this too, like the growing up part where she was probably searching for this father-like figure, wanted to, she was pretty innocent, and they made this deal of her sucking her thumb the whole time, which was quite in your face, but, and they also did it through the mum as well. She was constantly saying, like, giving her these verbal sprays about, you just want to grow up, you can't grow up. Sort of thing.
Yeah, it wasn't subtle.
No.
Look, and there's a whole lot touching on alcoholism and abuse, and and I said, it's brave that you do it. It's important to shine the light on this kind of stuff, because people are blind to it, and it impacts lives more than we know.
Yeah, like the biggest thing I took from this is that men are shits. That's what I wrote. Men are shits.
Men can be.
Yeah.
There's that capacity for complete insidious behaviour.
Yeah. Okay, what did we take away from this film? What did you take from it?
I think the one thing I take out of it is it just was too bleak for me.
Yeah.
The only thing that I liked really was that bond with the sisters, and she just like ripped that ideal to shreds when she walked out of them initially. I really didn't see that coming, and then it gave me nothing left. Like, there was nothing for me, and even every time she went back, it was not the way it should have been. And so it was just if someone's gonna talk to me in 2 years' time about this movie, I'll be like, that was a dark film. Like, that was tough. Where are you?
It's one of those biofilms that sort of doesn't give you the facts and the figures, and it was this date this year, like you mentioned. So it was a little bit different in that way, in that it wasn't sort of informing you much about her career or her life.
And I couldn't tell you any of the songs that she sung,
and didn't. Obviously there was this mention about Warner Brothers wanting her to release an album because she hadn't actually done an album, and just all these little bits and pieces that were never fully explored, or you weren't actually given the actual facts of her life. So I think, they definitely did just try to give this story. So it could have been a generic story. It didn't necessarily have to be the story of her.
It's a very good point, because so often when I see a biopic, I like to call it biopic, but I feel like that's not right.
It sounds like a medical thing.
I know. It just flows off the tongue nicely. So often after I've watched one about someone who I know nothing about, I am just on Google and I'm like, what was real? What wasn't real? What do I know? I want to know more about this person. And it's actually interesting, because recently, I know we're going to do this on the podcast in like 2 years, but Dolomite Is My Name is a similarly true story. And as soon as that movie finished, I was on there like, what's the true story with this guy? What's happening here? What's happening there? And that happens so often. In this, and I'm only just thinking about it now. I'm like, I didn't even look. I didn't look at anything about her.
IMDb. Did you get on IMDb to look up anyone in this film at all?
I didn't.
Me either.
Nah, I think I didn't think you would when you said Mahershala Ali was the only one I knew. But no, I didn't. I thought about it afterwards, and even retrospectively, I didn't. So.
Yeah, same. Okay, well, have you got any questions you want to ask?
The only question I had, you answered already about how does she know Cross? I didn't quite get it, but I think you touched on that nicely about everyone kind of knows everyone, and he just kind of really weaseled his way in there.
So I got a question that's similar to that. Like, so at the start he gave his kid. What happened to that kid?
I thought that too, and I think that's almost a sign of probably not the only kid he's got.
Yeah.
He sold his son for $10,000. Like, that is...
Yeah,
oh,
horrible.
man.
Did you think Peggy was a good mum still? Even though she had these issues and problems with people who would let her down, was she still a good mother? Because...
This is a good question.
Because they never, like, in situations like this, they'll often show, and we saw this in Imperial Dreams, the authorities will make an effort to take the kids away from people who they think are unstable, unable to care properly for a kid. So we never had any situation where that was even implied. So do you think that she was still, like, they all stood, even after all that, they all still stood by her?
Yeah.
In the end?
Good's a hard word, because the way that, you know, the situation she put those girls in was pretty ordinary. But the fact that probably 4 or 5 years pass, those girls seem like they're all right. They've always got a roof under their head. They're never really wanting food or anything like that. There's obviously that.
Because even though she was drunk a lot of times, she was still making them food. She was never really abusive to them. She wasn't hitting them. So she was just asleep a lot.
Yeah, she was a negligent mum, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's not a bad point. She wasn't an atrocious mum. Some of her behaviour was really bloody questionable.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it bothered me.
Okay. I think it's time to wrap this one up.
I think it is, yeah.
Put it all together.
You know, I've enjoyed this discussion, though. It's one of those films that I could have watched, forgotten about, and then never gone anywhere into deep diving it. And I'm glad we did, because there's a bit to discuss here.
Yeah, so we give our films a rating out of 5 and then give it an average as a team. What have you got, MJ?
Unfortunately, it wasn't for me, though. I enjoyed the conversation, but the film itself just really wasn't for me. The director just didn't give me anything to grab onto. I just got stuck floating through the jerky narrative, dislikable characters, and so-so acting performances. So, with such a bleak tone, I just needed something more to get me through. It was a rough watch. 1.5 stars.
1.5, very nice. Well, I watched this film and I was like, okay, that was a film I watched, and then I put my notes together and I was like, okay, this actually had quite a fair bit in it.
Yeah.
And I was like considering, okay, I watched it and I had this idea in my head what I was going to give it out of 5. And I put the notes together. I'm like, do I bump it up? Do I leave it? What do I do? Because it was one of those films where I was like, maybe I did like it more than I thought I did.
Yep.
So it was tough because I thought it was fairly well made. Like, yes, there were issues with the story and stuff. It was watchable. Like, it wasn't a paradox.
Don't compare anything to Paradox.
And like I mentioned, though, I would have liked some more music, but I think it still has some important messages that are relevant in 2020. Like, even though these events are from the 80s, like, men need to lift their game. And
I'm all for that,
and,
Jesse. I 100% agree with that.
And I think they did a good job with that.
Yep.
So I'm leaving. I'm not changing my rating, but I'm giving it a 2.5 out of 5.
I'm okay with that. And I was actually talking to someone else about this film. Like, what did you think of it? And I was just like, I didn't like it. Like, it's not my kind of film, but I get it. I like what they're trying to do, but there's a level of visceral connection to a film that was just non-existent for me. So everything you're saying, I agree with. This film has a place.
Like, yeah, I was pushed. I was like, do I give it a 3? I'm like, no, I'll leave it at 2.5 because I did have issues with it, but I thought that the attempt and looking back on it, it was okay.
So we've just chatted for nearly 45 minutes. You happy with 2.5?
Yep, 2.5.
You're not going to go any deeper than this. I wouldn't have thought so.
So that gives us an average of 2 as a team.
Good math.
I hope that's right.
So much easier when there's just two of us doing this.
Yeah, so much easy. So we are on social media. We have Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We are at Flix Forum. We're on Apple Podcasts. We're on Spotify. Subscribe, download, give us a 5-star rating if you can. You opened with this really early, and the question I had to pop on social media was, have you heard of Roxanne before?
Oh, well, that's a relevant one, though.
Yeah, I just wanted to see whether people had heard of it.
I reckon that a lot of people who have seen this film probably have.
Yeah. And anyone that listens to this probably has as well, because they're probably interested in it.
Very true. Very true.
So, we're back next week.
But still, answer us.
Give us some feedback. We're back next week.
We are.
Next week's our bonus episode. I'm very excited.
Oh, we're there. 75.
75.
Oh, goodness gracious me.
So next week we are doing our bonus show where we look at Netflix originals from 51 to 75. So if there's any film in our back catalogue that you want to see before then, make sure you do so, because we may spoil a few scenes,
We'll try not to.
We'll try not to.
We probably were a bit negligent last time.
Yeah,
but we'll try not to. It's such a fun episode for us to do. And we're also, in that episode, we'll have our 1 to 75 ranking as well, which, you know what, Jesse, I've discovered in the last 12 months, I just love lists. I like making lists. I like ranking things. I think my mind likes that kind of neatness.
Good.
Anyway, so I can't wait.
Good. I'm looking forward to it too. So I'll see you next week.
I forgot about that. That's awesome. Yes, I will see you next week. Thank you very much for today, and thank you for listening.